I'd like to welcome everyone to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, February 14th, 2023, here at 3 p.m. Madam Clerk, we have Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Carswell, Commissioner Britton in attendance. We also have our County Finance Officer, our County Attorney, and our new County Manager, Mr. Brian Epley. Welcome. I would remind everyone in the audience to please silence your mobile devices, and when you do come to the lectern to speak, please activate the light so those folks at home listening on YouTube you can be heard, please. That being said, that moves us on to item number 2, gentlemen. Approval of the agenda. The agenda was previously submitted. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. All those in favor of approval signify with uplifted hand. 4-0. 5-0. Good count, Madam Clerk. Somebody's phone ringing got me out of sorts. Gentlemen, thank you. So we'll move on to section 3, presentations. Item number 1, Pet of the Month, presented by Caitlin Sunnemeyer, Animal Services Director. Caitlin, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having us back again for February to present our Pets of the Month. This will be our normal presentation that we do. We'll bring a furry friend up here, show you guys a few cats and dogs we have available, as well as show off some of the events that we are doing and promoting at this current time. So that's what that presentation will be for.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Questions, comments on item 1? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We'll move on to item number 2 under presentations, report on the animals seized in the animal cruelty case. Caitlin?
Yes, so if you guys haven't heard by now, mid-January we had taken in 49 miniature horses and 39 chickens following an animal cruelty investigation. We have prepared an update on the horses and chickens, and if you guys would like, I'm happy to go into that now, or if you'd rather do that later, let me know.
Well, if you would like
to go over it now?
Yeah, if you would give us an update, please.
Okay. So we took in 49 miniature horses and 39 chickens between January 18th and 20th. The first day we took in 32 horses from a property out on US 70 and 39 chickens. After that, on the following day, we were able to seize 8 more and then 9 more the following day after we found out there were several more properties housing these animals. That was following an animal cruelty investigation after we had a horse starved to death. We found the deceased body and sent it off for necropsy. So with that, we had 41 of those horses. They were housed over at the Drexel Fairgrounds, and 8 of those were actually housed at another location because we didn't have a lot of space in there. You can imagine with 49 horses, that takes up a lot of space. We brought in our vet. He medically assessed all of those animals, developed feeding plans. A lot of them were extremely thin, so they had to be, with horses, you have to be really careful of refeeding syndrome, so they had to be placed on very special diets. We had a lot of volunteers come in and help oversee all of those diets to make sure those horses were gaining weight appropriately. In their stay with us, they were starting to gain some weight. Of course, horses gain weight slowly, so we're not going to see a huge weight gain until their 2-month recheck, and that's what we've got scheduled coming up. During that, we identified several medical problems. Their hooves were all checked and treated. We also were able to diagnose pregnancies because these animals were used to breed heavily and be sold. So there are 10 mares that are pregnant currently, so we will be expecting 10 more horses. Their arrival will be in the spring or early summer. So that will be an expense that will be coming up as well. And like I said, Dr. Jornigan will be out to re-examine all of our horses around March 20th. That'll be their 2-month mark. Our horses, thank goodness, have now been moved out to foster homes. The last group left at 2 o'clock last Friday out of that Drexel barn. So they are on pasture, getting a lot of love, a lot of attention. So that was extremely exciting. I've gotten a lot of great updates. You can see this little pony here kicking up his feet. He is more than excited to be out and about of that barn, getting a lot of nutrition, just feeling great. So that is always really fun to be able to see these photos come in from our fosters and these videos. For our chickens, we did take in the 39 chickens over at the Drexel Fairgrounds. Whenever we first brought them in, we noticed that one of them, one of the first ones we had pulled out, seemed really congested. So we pulled that one and isolated it and really paid attention to the other chickens that we were pulling out of there. Talked to our overseeing vet, Dr. Jornigan, about that, and he recommended sending off some tests for the chicken to see what could be going on. We hear all about avian influenza right now. Whenever he sent off that test, that kind of sprung the Department of Ag, and they wanted to come in and test more chickens. So when they came in and gathered those tests, they sent those off, found out these chickens had 2 pretty severe reportable diseases that they're reportable in the state of North Carolina. So the state did recommend that we humanely euthanize those chickens, and that was done on the 30th of January. So those chickens were not going to live a healthy life, and it would not have been fair to keep them with those illnesses. Moving forward, whenever we take custody of animals for animal cruelty cases, we are allowed to petition for funds to be deposited for animal care from the owner. If they do not wish to sign the animals over to us, they can, and they're hoping to get those animals back. So we've been working with our county attorney to file that petition. We go and we present 30 days of reasonable expenses that the owner would be responsible for, and those reasonable expenses are also listed a little low. You can imagine caring for 49 horses and 39 chickens. That's not very cheap. So that would require her, if that is approved, to deposit those funds for the first 30 days and then every 30 days after that, because the expenses do drop quite a bit after the initial bedding and all of that is done. Also, these horses are out of their little tiny stalls, so we don't need as much bedding. They're out on pasture and things like that. So that petition is being sent in, so hopefully we will get that filed and we can recoup some of those costs. If she fails to pay those within 5 days, she forfeits those animals, and that would allow us to then move them out where they would need to go. So cost of care, that is broken down. If it was not for our volunteers, I do not know how we would have made it through this. We were basically running 2 animal shelters, one with animals that we're not as familiar with. So our horse volunteers were extremely helpful during this. I think we calculated it just with the volunteer labor alone, that came out to about $21,000 that those guys helped us with. So that was absolutely amazing, and we just appreciate them so much. Estimated expenses going forward, I believe we had, okay, that's been fixed on here, just wanted to make sure. We're estimating about $7,500 monthly for the cost of keeping the care of these horses. So that would include their food, any additional bedding, a farrier, they have to have their hooves trimmed, and then any medical that may come up, especially with these new ponies coming in. We're going to have to vaccinate them, check out mamas and all that stuff. So that's going to be a little bit of expense coming in. Our Animal Services Foundation has been absolutely wonderful in this. Thank you for our media outlets for helping us raise awareness to this. Our Animal Services Foundation has been helping fund a lot of the expenses going into this. They have raised $21,667.20 from people donating, and we still would love for people to donate, but we are making sure every last penny of that is going to the care of these horses. And once again, we want to thank everybody who has pitched in to help us get to where we are now. Our Animal Services Foundation had several board members out there volunteering with us. They didn't know a lot about horses, but it's not hard to muck a stall. So that's just, and a big shout out to my staff who, was absolutely amazing in all of this. They held it together, held down our current shelter, still operating as we needed to, and being able to take care of these animals. So that's it. That's all I have.
Caitlin, thank you. Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's been your interaction with the district attorney's office as far as prosecution?
A little slow. We are meeting with the district attorney's office tomorrow at 3:00. We've requested several meetings with them. I do understand that they have bigger cases to work on, but this is kind of front and center on what we've been working on. But we do have a meeting scheduled with them at 3 o'clock tomorrow to talk about any pending charges that may be coming.
Thank you so much. I understand that there are other bigger cases, but to me, this is one of the bigger cases that we have had in a long, long time. Appreciate all the effort that you and your staff have put into this, but we or I, and I think I speak for most of the commissioners here, this should not happen in Burke County, and I don't want to see it happen again. So if we need to ask the county manager or the county attorney to be involved with the district attorney's office, would you please do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions, comments? I just want to say I was personally there on multiple occasions to see all the volunteers that came out, and it was a tremendous outpouring. And obviously, media outlets helped, Charlotte News and whatnot, and had opportunities to speak with them. So, you've done a fantastic job. I know, a lot of folks, didn't matter how cold or rainy, because it was cold down there and raining a lot of times, and you still got to feed and take care of the horses. And so,
Still take care.
our deep appreciation for everything y'all have done. That was over beyond the call of your job, and so we appreciate that 24/7. Also want to thank, didn't see it in here, the town of Drexel Fairgrounds and the fire department who brought water.
Yes.
And so, there was a lot of pitching in from municipality as well, and a lot of people from around the state. And of course, the Fosters is, Kay and I talked to multiple Fosters that would contact us from different counties. And so it was amazing how many Fosters were willing to take on the horses. You actually had to take down the website because there were so many. Would you stop at 100?
Yeah, we had a little over 100 applications come through. We had to cut it off, and we had a volunteer going through and doing initial vet work there, and then we conducted site visits. So that was a whole separate process to be able to make sure we were placing these animals in the right care.
Absolutely. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As president of the Animal Services Foundation nonprofit, we will be hosting some type of appreciation event for everybody that has pitched in or contributed in some way for the care of these animals.
Thank you. Anything else for Caitlin? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, this brings us to item number 3, Health Department presentation on progress of Burke County Recovery Court, presented by Shay Moore, Health Education Supervisor. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I hope you all are too. So good afternoon, Chairman Mulvey and Commissioners. Myself, along with some of the other members of the Burke County Recovery Court team, are here to give an update on the program. In relation to the program, I am the grant coordinator. So I have with me today Taylor Setzer, who's the program coordinator, Taylor Rocket, who is the assistant district attorney, Lisa Wentworth, peer support specialist, and Ashley Phillips, who is a 2021 graduate of the program. Each person here will give about a 4 to 5 minute update on the program from their perspective, and we will leave an opportunity for any questions at the end. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Burke County Recovery Court program, this program was made possible through a Bureau of Justice implementation grant that was applied for in early 2018 and was awarded $500,000 later that same year for a period of 4 years. The program officially kicked off in May of 2019 and has continued ever since, with court sessions held every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. As could be expected, during COVID, the pandemic brought along several unexpected changes to the course of the program. At the beginning of the pandemic, when stay-at-home orders were given, court sessions were unable to take place, support groups were unable to meet, and many of the participants found themselves falling out of compliance with the program. With such a hard blow being dealt in the infancy stage of this program, the team began to question whether we were going to meet our grant requirements of at least serving 80 participants within the grant life, and how our other program goals would be achieved. However, once orders were lifted and the vaccine was made available, things began smoothing out and progress was able to be made. While many challenges have been faced over the last 4 years, the mission of the program has remained the same: to provide offenders who enter the program access to all available community resources to assist them moving into long-term recovery, reducing recidivism rates, and also reducing the burden on the judicial system and the residents of Burke County. Year 4 of the program, or the grant, ended in December 2022, but we recently received a grant extension that would help the program spend down the remaining funds and help those currently enrolled in Recovery Court move through the phases of the program. This extension will remain in place until August 30th of this year. There are plans in place to apply for an enhancement grant in the next couple of months, and if received, this grant would start October 1st of this year. I'll now let Taylor Setzer, who's the program coordinator, share a little bit from her perspective.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. As Shan mentioned, I'm Taylor Setzer. I'm the program coordinator. And I prepared a PowerPoint just to give you guys some visuals of what our program consists of today. Oh, next, please. So, more than 30 years ago, the first drug court opened its doors on a simple premise. Rather than continuing to allow individuals with histories of addiction and crime to cycle through the justice system at great expense to the public, use the leverage of court to keep them engaged in treatment long enough to be successful. Next slide, please. So who we serve. We do high-risk, high-need, non-violent offenders. This consists of H&I felonies, or we also take other felonies if they have an underlying substance use disorder. They cannot have any violent charges or drug trafficking charges. We also have to make sure that they are diagnosed before they enter the program with a substance use disorder. And they have to be willing to commit to a 1 to 2 year program, community supervision, and treatment. Next slide, please. So who's our team? We have a judge who presides over recovery court sessions to review and applaud their progress and immediately address any obstacles. District attorney who represents the community and its concerns. Recovery court coordinator who meets with them to develop case plans and also provides a progress report by every 2 weeks to the team. We have a mental health liaison that works in the jail to help us with mental health assessments and other needs. Peer support specialist who shares lived experience with the participants to help guide them through the process and with resources. And a treatment provider and their contracted lab for drug screens. So benefits for the program for participants includes person-centered treatment, counseling, and peer support services. We help them with resources for childcare, housing, education, and transportation when needed. We also provide accountability through sanctions, curfew, house arrest, essays, increased random drug screening, higher levels of treatment, and increased duration in the current program phase. We also provide motivation through incentives, which could be anything from certificates of achievement, gift cards, fishbowl drawings, and we also provide financial assistance with medication-assisted treatment if they need it. Next. Recovery Court and community benefits. Recovery courts reduce recidivism by 58%. Each year, recovery courts serve 150,000 people nationally. We have, as Che mentioned, we actually met our goal of 83 participants during the grant period. We weren't sure we were going to make it with COVID, but we got there. According to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, on average, every person in recovery court saves their community $6,000. According to these numbers, Burke County Recovery Court has saved their community a little less than $500,000. We currently have 16 active participants, 7 in 1, 3 participants in phase 2, 5 in phase 3, and 1 in 4. As of December 2022, we've had 11 people graduate, and we expect 6 more before the end of this year. Taylor Rockett is going to come up from the District Attorney's Office to give her insight.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Taylor Rocket. I am an assistant district attorney employed by our elected district attorney, Mr. Scott Riley. As Che Moore said to you earlier, this current drug court that we have began in May of 2019. And as luck or fate or unluck would have it, I also started my job at the district attorney's office in May of 2019. And I have been, up until this year, the assigned ADA for drug treatment court. When Che asked me if I would come speak with you guys, I was honored to do so. I have learned quite a bit about the treatment side of things and things that an attorney employed by the DA's office doesn't usually get to deal with, and it's been quite eye-opening. We have had a great deal of success. We've had a great deal of struggles, but all in all, I have seen a dramatic transformation in many individuals that I have prosecuted numerous times, and now they are productive members of society. They are doing well. They are contributing to both society and to the recovery community in great and immensely helpful ways. You're going to see one today. You saw some on that screen. My role is, or the ADA that's assigned to drug court, who the new one is actually back here, his name is Mr. Austin Foster. The ADA in drug court, their role is to essentially vet potential referrals to the drug court program and decide if they are appropriate based on our sort of bylaws. Some of those main things that will make you ineligible to be a participant in drug court is that you are a violent criminal, that you have violent convictions. We don't want, people with assaultive histories in these group settings. Additionally, that you don't have drug trafficking charges for obvious reasons. So I will review when we get a referral from probation or from someone in the community, whether it's someone with the jail or whomever, I will review, or some member of the DA's office, it can be any of us, would review that person's record to see what their criminal history looks like and to see if they're appropriate for drug treatment court via their criminal history. And then, of course, once they are in the program, we maintain our role as prosecutor, but we also become a part of the team making decisions as a whole for the sanction or reward or whatever type of change needs to be made to each person's treatment plan, depending on how they're, I don't know if you'd say performing, but how they're doing and the progress that they're making or not making. And then, of course, if a participant fails or if they continue to participate in criminal activity, we will prosecute them accordingly. Not to go all law school on you here, but our recovery court is a post-conviction recovery court, meaning every one of our participants has been convicted of a crime and referred into the program. You can only be referred into this program if you are on active probation. Probation and drug treatment court are married. They cannot be done separately. Well, drug court can't be done separately without probation. And so, of course, if a person were to be unsuccessful or were to refuse to participate or fulfill their obligations as required by the contract that they sign, of course, that is a violation of their probation and they are prosecuted accordingly. We, of course, have a judge in drug court who can hear those probation violations. Sometimes we sentence them to, a short active sentence and allow them to come back into the program, hopefully with renewed kind of enthusiasm, if you will, and sometimes their sentences are activated and they're sent to prison. So it's a good avenue for the DA's office, in my opinion, to be able to do things sort of outside the normal realm of regular probation, community service, and prison. If at the end of the day, if we can create a recovered, productive member of society from someone that we've prosecuted on numerous occasions, that's by and large more helpful than sending them to prison. It's cheaper, it's safer for the community, it is certainly safer for that person, and there's just a great incentive to be able to do that. So I hope that helps explain a little bit of how it works on the legal end. I've had a wonderful experience in my 3.5 years in this program, and I'm very thankful that I was able to be a part of it for that long. And I'm still on the advisory board, so I'll be able to kind of watch it from afar. But if there's anything that I can answer or that the DA's office can answer as far as how this works or what our role is, we're happy to do so. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa Wentworth. I'm the peer support for the Recovery Court. I am a person who identifies as someone in long-term recovery. I've been in recovery for 8 years. I'm also someone who identifies as someone who's been through the system. I've been to prison, done probation, got off probation last year. I did 5 years of federal probation. I was incarcerated in a sister county who did not offer recovery court. My only option was to go to prison. By the grace of God, I went to federal prison, which offered treatment. And I came out with a mindset that I was done with what I was doing because of the treatment I received in prison. My job on the recovery court team is to assist individuals in navigating the system that they don't know. They don't know what's going on. They don't know where they're going. They don't know how to navigate their disease that they're dealing with, and to educate them that they do have a disease and to educate the community about their disease and how they're dealing with it. I'm also their advocate in the courtroom. I talk to the judge and offer my assistance on what I think might help them to get to where they need to be in life. Next person up is Ashley, who is a recovery court graduate.
I'm Ashley. First, I'd like to say I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. Bear with me because I'm not a great speaker, but I figure it's for a great cause, so it's worth being uncomfortable for the few moments that I'll be up here. First, you know, I had all this stuff wrote out, and I figured, you know, I've been racking my brain whether to share the blood, sweat, and tears of my struggles, but that's not where I'm at anymore. So I'll start with, you know, my experience with recovery court. And, you know, in the beginning, I was helpless, in and out of jail, in and out of rehabs. You know, I thought I was going to die an addict. I thought I was going to overdose and just be done with it. But my probation officer mentioned recovery court, so I figured, you know, why not? I've done everything else, so might as well give it a shot. So in terms of that, you know, they help you establish stability. They helped me realize that, you know, I have the freedom to mess up, but they allow me to make those choices, and I chose to stick through that. And they helped me, you know, realize that I am worth that, and they were a great support system. I think one time my daughter was even sick. She had a seizure, and they bought her a teddy bear. And that was like one of my fondest memories because it was just like the sweetest thing ever. But, you know, they're a great support system. I think for a lot of us addicts, we need that support and that constant reassurance that we have people behind us that are just like us, that are there for us. And I think it's important that we all get that. Yeah, with that, it's a great program. I 10 out of 10 recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you all for allowing us to share a little of the different aspects and perspectives of the Burke Recovery Court team. Do you all have any questions for us today?
Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, Shay, tell us that this all came about because of a grant. What happens when the grant's over? Are we going to be able to continue this program?
So that is the plan, is to apply for what is called an enhancement grant. So after the implementation is over, we can go back to SAMHSA or to the Bureau of Justice to apply for an enhancement grant to continue the progress that we've already made within the Recovery Court program. Of course, we can't, you know, it's not wise just to lay all of our eggs in that one basket. there's no reason as to why we would get denied, but you just never know. Because we have made such good progress within our own program. That's why I say that there's no reason we should be denied. But we would like to see, to be more out in the community, to receive support from the community, because I still feel that there's pockets of the community that do not know about Recovery Court or what exactly it is and the role it plays in helping reduce substance use in our community and how it impacts them as a community member, taxpayer of Burke County. So our plan right now is to apply for an enhancement grant. And so in the meantime, just continue, giving presentations where we can of like the impact that we're making and that people can see the value of Recovery Court.
So financially, what, outside of the normal cost of court, what does the grant pay for? Why couldn't you do it without the grant, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, that's a great question. So it also provides treatment and travel funds for the participants. So I look to Taylor because that's more of like her avenue of kind of what she deals with. But it does help provide travel funds for the peer support to pick up the people within the program to get them to meetings. It does help with the medication-assisted treatment that they receive while in the program. The conference, so there's the NADCP conference that it doesn't require, but it's highly favorable that all drug court teams attend the conference annually so that you can kind of stay on top of all of the new practices, best practices across the country. It's widely attended in various locations within the U.S., but you get to learn from others that are in the specific role that you play within Recovery Court at those conferences. It also helps provide funding for, is there anything else I'm missing, Taylor? I'm sorry.
It pays for the peer support salary, the coordinator salary, fringe
Yes.
benefits, medication-assisted treatment.
Yes.
Conference, travel, transportation's a big issue for us. We have to have money for transportation because we don't have a treatment facility in this county. We use College Connection, which is in Hickory. So everyone that's receiving treatment, we transport them from Burke County to Hickory daily, 3 times a week, twice a week at least.
Yes.
So that's a big portion of the grant.
Yeah. Lots spent on travel. You're
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make a comment. I'm sitting here feeling a bit overwhelmed by the information that you guys have given us, especially in deep admiration of the courage of the last 2 ladies that came up here to speak. We can provide all the opportunities in the world, but the test is that someone's willing to take it. And I want you 2 to know that I'm going to leave here tonight with the deepest admiration for you. And if there's anything ever I can do, please let me know.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. Well said. I agree 100%. Mr. Carswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you know, I've been over my travels for the last 2 years in the state of North Carolina presenting the Substance Use Disorder Program, talking about it with members of the North Carolina Department of Justice. One of the greater things that has happened is the Recovery Court. It's been proven by the numbers that you've seen up on that screen. Unfortunately, we were a little slow getting into the program, and we should have done it a lot sooner than what we did. As someone said up here that there are failures, I disagree with that. If somebody doesn't do as well as we expect them to, it's not a failure. We tried, and we tried extremely hard. People have the tendencies to do as they so desire, or they wouldn't be in the program to start with. So everything is a success. There's a success story that came up here at the end and told her story. Both of them sitting up here. My son's not going to get to tell his story. As you know, we buried him. There's other children here in Burke County that they don't get to tell about the successes. Y'all are very fortunate that you get to stand up here and say, I went to prison, I did this. Don't ever be ashamed of it. It happens, So keep telling your story. We'll keep working. The North Carolina General Assembly, Jeff, is keenly aware that the program does have some success. You know, sometimes the metrics of how you measure, there's plenty of people out there that say that the program doesn't work. I totally disagree. The program does work. The numbers are there showing you even in money, how much money that we've saved. People need help. We've dealt with substance abuse for a good while. It's in the forefront now. And we need to continue to work the program, because the rate of recidivism is, cut by 58%. You can't, to me, that's success. And I think y'all should be commended for those numbers. DHHS, state DHHS is keen on this program. So I think the General Assembly, when the grant monies run out, I think the DHHS and the General Assembly will see the benefits of this program, and we'll continue to find dollars. We have the dollars down there. So we as citizens need to talk to our legislators if we know somebody in the program. I think, as you said, Shay, the fallacy of this program is a lot of people don't know about it, and we need more money to do that. So if we can do that through our district attorney's offices or whatever source that we can use to tell people that the program is out there. So we need to be saving as many as we can. I'll continue to move around North Carolina telling my story and telling our story from the association side. But again, I commend you for everything that you do. It is a success. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. Any other questions, comments? Shay, thank you so much. Great presentations to all of you and your staff, and the testimonial. Very impactful. We're proud of you. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to presentation number 4, Tourism Development Authority, financial updated for period ended December 31st, 2022, presented by our good friend, Mr. Ed Phillips.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the new commissioners who are going to hear my fabulous report for the first time. And I appreciate you guys being here, and welcome to the new county manager, moved up from Cleveland County, up into Burke County. So we appreciate you being here, and welcome. Before we get started into the financials of this, I did want to mention a very special event we're having here on Saturday, March the 11th at Comma. Discover Burke Trails Day will be a celebration of the year of the trail in Burke County. We have 220 miles of trails, named trails in Burke County, on the over 70, it's around 77 trails that are here. So we're going to have a really fun afternoon, kids activities, food trucks, exhibitors. Deborah Holt Noel from PBS North Carolina is going to be our MC for the afternoon. And she's super excited to be here and talk about Burke County, and also talk about the trails, Year of the Trail. Jennifer Farr Davis is also going to be one of our speakers that afternoon. Jennifer holds the world record on the fastest hike ever on the Appalachian Trail by a woman. I think it's 47 days. It's something crazy. And she's going to talk about what motivates her to get out and appreciate hiking and that kind of thing. Author Randy Johnson is also going to be here that afternoon. Randy has written numerous books. His claim to fame, in my point of view, is that he saved the backcountry trail system on Grandfather Mountain. So he worked with Hugh Morton back in the 1970s to create all of the trails on Grandfather Mountain and the shelters and the ability to use those trails. And he's going to talk about that as well as some of the other books that he's written. So that is Saturday, March 11th from 12 to 5 at Comma. Admission is free. Come one, come all ages, and it'd be a fun afternoon to appreciate everything that Burke County has in the outdoors. We'll have over 20 exhibitors, Forest Service, state parks, some nonprofit groups that work outdoors, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll get right into the financials, and I think you have there in front of you the budget to actual July 1 through December 31st. The remarkable thing about this report is the actual Burke County government occupancy tax revenue. So we have a budget of $750,000. We're very conservative on our budgets. In the first 4 months of the fiscal year, July, August, September, October, we collected $366,382. What's not on this sheet, which I'll go ahead and share with you, is that the first 6 months of the year, July through December, we've now collected $509,304. Now, it's tempting to do the math and say, well, the first 6 months you collected $500,000 for a full year, it could be over $1 million. It doesn't quite work that way because we have some slow months in January and February and March, which aren't our most populated months. But I do believe we're going to probably exceed $900,000 in occupancy tax revenue. We have more vacation rentals than ever before. Our hotels are doing great. School of Science and Math is providing a lot of business to the hotels. The business park, the Burke Business Park, Unix, which is expanding out there, is providing a lot of business to the downtown hotels. So all elements of travel and tourism, whether it's business travel or leisure travel, corporate, even medical tourism here, folks coming here to work in the medical field, is all up and doing very well. So you can see the actual 366, some of the expenses down through there. Revenue, our trolley revenue is halfway through, not even halfway through the year, at $24,409. The trolley's finally caught on and is doing excellent. So I'll entertain any questions about the financial part of this. And then also you have in your packet the audit, which was completed just back in October. The financial statement was produced by Margaret Pierce, who's the county finance officer, as you know, and also the finance officer for the TDA. So she puts that together and provides that to the auditor, and then the auditor comes in and does their work. We had a very clean audit this year, no findings whatsoever, and came out well on that. So I'll entertain some questions, and then I'll also mention a couple other exciting things going on.
Questions, comments, gentlemen, for Ed? And just for your informational purposes, Johnny and I were around some other county commissioners last week, one from Mecklenburg County. I called Ed, and one we know from Buncombe County. We were talking about the Year of the Trail, and I told them about the festival, and next thing I know, one's invited, said that she and her husband was come up from Mecklenburg County, and so we send invitations to the other commissioner boards around Western North Carolina to come and partake. So.
Yeah. There's no other questions. I'll just mention too, people don't sometimes realize what we do. We're hosting travel journalists here on April 22nd through the 24th. Burke County was selected by the State Tourism Office of one of 2 destinations in North Carolina to host these journalists. They're coming from 4 foreign countries, and they'll be here for 3 days. And we will take them on an itinerized tour of Burke County of the most unique and interesting things to see while they're here. One of them is from Brazil. I don't know where the other 3 are from as of yet. And someone from the State Tourism Office will be here as well for that tour. So that's April 22nd through the 24th. We've also recently done some research utilizing a group out of Salt Lake City, Utah, that tracks your cell phone. And it tracks you into our destination here in Burke County. It also pairs your identity with your credit card receipts. Believe me, everybody's watching you guys all the time. When you spend money and you have a phone and that phone is turned on, they're tracking you. And we now know for sure that where people are coming from and also how much they're spending. And so our #1 market into Burke County is Charlotte and the greater Charlotte area. Our #2 market is Buncombe County. A lot of people come down the mountain from Buncombe County to spend time in Burke County. And some people are surprised by that, some are not, because they see that in their business. After that, it's Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, and upstate South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg area. And they spend, the overnight visitors spend an average of $319 per day on their overnight trip here. So that's hotel, food, transportation, and shopping. So it's quite interesting. We have tons of data. We could share with you more about those people, like where they eat. We know where they eat. We know how much they spend. We're not tracking chains. We're only tracking local restaurants. That has a greater impact on them than it does on chain restaurants. So anyway, that's my report, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me present.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? That data that you're getting, obviously I've seen the presentation, that is really remarkable because you can tell by month what is the most popular attraction, where are they visiting, what restaurants are they going to? So at some point, and we're just now drilling down into that information at the TDA, so not now, but maybe 6 months from now, once you get, the kinks out, so to speak, we'll know what information to present to us, and that would be a good thing. But no, that's a great investment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. That brings us to item number 5, reevaluation update. This will be presented by our new county manager, Brian Epley.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, first I'd like to just publicly thank each of you for such a warm welcome and on board. It's really been a privilege, and I've, in my first roughly 2 weeks, have learned a lot and toured the organization, meeting a lot of our leadership team, spending time with each of you, and I'm excited. And one of the things that is here, and one of the projects that we are working through managing is a tax revaluation. And I'm here this afternoon simply to provide an update on the process. What is revaluation? Answer that question. Why are we doing it? How is it conducted? What's that methodology look like? And then as we get more conclusivity about our numbers, about how we're trending, I obviously will be sharing that with commissioners during the budget process to really navigate how we conclude. But as I mentioned for today, much more high level as a progress update of the project, something that our team here has been working on for about 2 years. There's 60,000 parcels in Burke County. Each of those have to be segmented, and analytics and statistical analysis have to be ran to arrive at updated valuations. So we'll talk a little bit about what reval is, why we're doing it, when are we doing it, how we're doing it, and then if I'm a taxpayer, what should I expect next? And I'll be very brief, certainly, and answer questions at the end. But the first question is, what is revaluation? Revaluation is a very scientific, analytical calculation process in which we try to align tax values with market value. And we'll talk more about what market value is later in the presentation, but there is a very clear definition of that. And so we go through this process, which is mandated by North Carolina statute, overseen by the North Carolina Department of Revenue, to align our tax values, which are what people, what's used to calculate what a tax levy would be, with market value. That's what we're trying to accomplish. In North Carolina, both statutorily and our Constitution requires that we follow this ad valorem methodology. Folks maybe commonly see those terms. It's a Latin phrase that literally means according to value. And in North Carolina, we assign that according to value to property. And that's how, again, we arrive at what taxable value is. It's important to remember that we only look at real property when we do these revaluation calculations. And in North Carolina, you have to do that at least every 8 years. Statute is very clear that you have to do it at least every 8 years. But the Department of Revenue recommends that commissioners can adopt an accelerated schedule, meaning you can do it quicker than 8 years. There are some neighboring states like Virginia who do it every year. The last one in Burke County was 2019, so 2023 was a scheduled. There has been a resolution adopted by Burke County to do that every 4 years. I would tell you across North Carolina that is the most common schedule by far. Most counties in North Carolina have a 4-year schedule. Some do it quicker, some extenuate it based on circumstances, but 4 years is the cycle here, so 2023 was a scheduled revaluation. I think it's important to keep in mind that the total tax base here in Burke County is a tick over $7.5 billion, but that's made up of 4 components. Real property, which is primarily land, structure, and buildings, is what we're talking about with revaluation. There are 3 other components, personal property, motor vehicles, and state boards. State boards would be things like railroads and power lines and right-of-ways and some of those state-regulated items. We don't value those here. Our tax assessor's office doesn't do that. Those values are determined by the state of North Carolina. Motor vehicles is pretty clear. Personal property are things that I think the easiest way to understand it is if you take your house and turn it upside down and shake it, anything that would fall out would be personal property. Everything else would be real. So if you notice on the table here, 3 out of our 4 components are in constant revaluation. They're annually updated. Real property, again, buildings, land primarily, is the only thing that's updated during this revaluation process. And there's a general statute, 105-286, which mandates that all counties in North Carolina conduct a reval every 8 years. There's a caveat to that statute that requires a constant measurement of how your tax values align to market value. And that's one of the things that's driving the process here in Burke County. So the statute requires that if market value is established and your tax values are more than 15% below or above that tax value, that's going to require the revaluation process to begin. And that's constantly being measured. So literally every sale that goes to the MLS system in Burke County, it goes through the Department of Revenue. They make random samples, 300 to 400 per year, and they literally are measuring what did that property sell for versus what was the tax value in Burke County. And if the sales value is higher or lower by more than 15%, that's going to impact what we call a sales ratio. And that's the other caveat that we have to look. So even if we weren't scheduled in a 4-year cycle to do a revaluation in Burke County in 2023, by tracking the market, we know that we're outside of that parameter of 15%. So we would be having in a period of mandatory revaluation anyway. Here's just a quick optic of what that sales ratio equals. I put a quick, again, just a very simple illustration of what we're trying to accomplish with revaluation, which is an equilibrium of tax book value equaling market value. And the red line, the chart on the left, we're measuring proportionality to market value on the vertical axis, and the horizontal axis is time, year over year. And you can see back, if you go all the way to the left-hand side of that chart, that red line represents 100% of market. So that's when tax and market are equal. Prior to 2014, following the Great Recession, there was often times when the tax value exceeded market because we saw the bubble bust and the real estate collapse, the Great Recession, those type of things. But typically, when you go through a revaluation process, again, you're reestablishing that equilibrium. You can see in 2019, the last time the county did a revaluation, following that process, we were at 99.27, so really close to 100% market value. Since that point, increase in demand, limited supply, escalating cost in labor and supplies have really created a gap. And we've concluded 2022 at 74%, and that number's continued to elongate as we've worked through 2023. That's not unique to Burke County. When we look at our region and compare ourselves to McDowell, Catawba, Cleveland, and Lincoln, the trend is very similar. The closer you get back to that Great Recession time, the higher tax values were compared to market. And since that point, there's been this very incremental decline all the way through 2022. And that's the most comprehensive data that we have for these regional counties. But you can see everybody's, in that 25 to 35% range away from market. So this is not uncommon. This is the trend. In general, we're seeing values rise. And again, until revaluation periods happen in each of these counties, those tax values are staying stagnant. So essentially, this is where you end up. Instead of having equilibrium, those market values are much heavier, much larger, much more in demand, and we have to go through and kind of reset those things. So from a timing perspective, I think it's important to remember that real property values are changing fluidly, and it's really not practical to try to match those fluctuations in tax and book, and that's why reval is so critical. And statutes require that we only adjust those real properties as of January 1 of that revaluation year. So literally what we're trying to do is to capture the values at 12:01 a.m. on January 1st of any reval year. And that's what we've done. January 1st, 2023, we've captured those values, and those values will be communicated to our taxpayers. Being the mailing process will begin next week, the 20th, which is one of the reasons that we're here today, is to update each property owner will receive that notice of value, and that level of communication is something obviously that's important. From a methodology perspective, as I mentioned earlier, there is a very clear definition of what market value is, and it's fairly logical that it's the price estimated in terms of money at which a willing buyer and a willing seller would exchange property, an arm's length transaction. So we are able to exclude sales that may not be arm's length. So for a family or a state or short sales from a bank, those type of things in which a property may not be sold at market value are excluded from this evaluation in the sales ratio. So we're able to get a true market-based, open free market concept. Market values are established also by these appraisals process. Really, there's two types of approved appraisals. The first one is a fee appraisal. That happens more on an individual level, a granular level. So if you're selling your property, you may hire an appraiser to come in and look at it, look at comparable sales, physically walk through and look at finishes. And it's again, just a much more detailed, singular focus. A mass appraisal, on the other hand, is what local governments in North Carolina use through these reevaluation process, and it includes the development of neighborhoods. And as we look around Burke County, our tax office has developed about more than 200 neighborhoods. So clearly this illustration on the right, in which I've created red, blue, and yellow boxes, is illustrative purposes only. These aren't actual neighborhoods that we've created, but the concept of grouping similar properties together by geographic location, by similar sales, is what I'm trying to demonstrate. And we take those neighborhoods and we try to apply some uniformity standards. So back in November, this board, as required by statute, approved what's called a schedule of values. And that schedule of values assigns certain values, whether it's to land or to square footage of single family homes. And it's the value that will be calculated and then mailed to Burke County citizens beginning next week it's a calculated assessment. It is not a subjective. It's much more objective in how we arrive at that value. So for example, took a very conservative approach, and I applaud this board for doing that. We used $115 per square foot in that schedule of values. So if you live in one of these neighborhoods, we take your square footage if you live in a single family home and start with the base foundational value of your square footage multiplied by $115 a square foot, which I believe we would all agree in today's market is difficult to build or replace at that level. So trying very, very intentionally not to overvalue properties and be comparative to market. And then you'll have adjustments to that base value based on amenities that may be in the property, swimming pools, basements, other fixtures and finishes that are documented in our tax documents about what the composition of that property may look like. This is difficult to see, but the intention of this was to just show what happens generally over time. If this was a little larger, you would be able to see that the median sales price for a home in Burke County in January 1, 2019 was $150,000. Fast forward a year, January 1, 2020, that was $164,000. 21, it was $184,000. 22, it was $210,000, and that's continued. So again, that tax value has stayed stagnant since 2019, the last time the reval happened, but the market value from a median sales price has risen up to $200,000, and that's continued, which has created that gap. Here you can see it really the same way, heating up. The red's intended to show kind of heating up of the market, and that's easy when you look at it from an economic perspective to recognize demand is high, rates were low, borrowing rates were low during that time. There was certainly a pretty vibrant economy. Materials and labor costs for replacement and building were increasing and escalating, and so that drove price and value up, which has an inverse relationship to our sales ratios I was mentioning earlier. I think the other thing, the most critical thing to remember about these process and the values that Burke County homeowners and citizens will receive next week is that it's just an analytic of the value. And that should not be interpreted as a fixed composition of what the tax levy would be. Property value and tax levy are two independent components of an equation to arrive at what that bill would be. The Board of Commissioners, as we navigate through the budget process, will evaluate county needs and take many things into consideration when you're setting the rate. But again, what I've intended to illustrate here is as property values increase or decrease over time, that rate is another independent variable in the equation that will dictate tax levy. So tax levy can't be assumed in a proportional way as value. Just because your value goes up doesn't mean that there'll be a proportional increase in your levy once those bills are sent out in July. So, as I mentioned, taxpayers should receive their new value sometime following that mail out next week. If they agree, nothing they need to do. If they disagree, there is an informal appeals process. We'll include instructions, very detailed instructions in that mailing notice about what an informal process and appeal is. But most simply, it's scheduling an appointment with one of our appraisers and sitting down with them in a one-on-one setting and going through the calculation of their value. So looking at comparable sales, looking at the data that we have in our tax records that we applied the schedule of values to, and showing how that calculation was arrived at. And if there are changes that need to be made, that appraiser will have that authority to do so. If a resolution can't be agreed upon between one of our appraisers and the taxpayer, there's a next layer, which is a formal appeal to the Board of Equalization and Review. I've included in your packets members that you've appointed to that board, and that will convene sometime after April to conduct that. The illustration here on the far right is just an optic of what that informal appeal process looks like. We're also, Mr. Chairman, working through setting up a website with FAQs so people can go to Burke County website to the tax office page, and on there will be a link with FAQs and further detailed instructions about what an informal appeal process would look like. So it's one thing that I would say that's really important. If an informal appeal is in need, it's really important that the taxpayer start that process within 30 days of receiving their notice of value. That's a really important milestone, and that's just so that we can get all the data compiled and have a good base before bills go out in July. I think that is conclusive of where we are in the process. Obviously, as I mentioned, much more detail to come as far as analytical review of the neighborhoods that I mentioned, and this board working through the budget process. But happy to answer any questions you all may have ahead of those values being mailed out next week.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation. Questions, comments at this point?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. County Manager, what are some of the things that a taxpayer may come in and appeal and say, do you agree with me or disagree with me?
It's a good question. A taxpayer may comprise their own comparable sales, right? So they may, if they are able to ascertain MLS data or recent sales of similarly situated properties that they believe are more favorable comparables. But essentially, the role of the taxpayer there will be to, as you can see it's kind of difficult to see, but at the top, they start with what is their opinion of the value, and then how do they arrive at that opinion. Again, if we have a home in our tax system, so we're taking these values for square footage or amenities and applying it to the records that we have in our tax system. If the property substantially changed since the last time that we've had someone physically observe or be in the property, likely that could change it. But they start with their opinion of what the value is, and then help our assessor or appraiser understand how they've calculated that, either through market data or changes in the property.
Thank you. Great assessment of that. I just want to make sure that citizens understand that they should not be embarrassed to appeal if they think they got a problem.
That's right.
Absolutely come appeal. That's what we're here for. We want to make citizens completely satisfied that they understand what the process was. I think it was a great process this year. I'm glad we did it in-house, and looking forward to I am looking forward to get to make the citizens aware that we are truly concerned. When you come up with a reval, we want to make sure that it is fair. That is our goal.
That's 100% right, and accuracy is critical to that. 60,000 parcels, DOR would tell us to expect 10% appeals, so that's 6,000. That's a pretty high number, and we look forward to working all of them, and at the conclusion of that, having more, a higher level of insurance that our data is correct. So, yes, sir.
Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? Well, you did a great job with something that's sometimes misunderstood. So absolutely, and we can't wait for more information moving forward to share with the public. As Commissioner Carswell said, to make this give all our citizens clarity on how this process works, and I think that simplifies it pretty well right there. So thank you, sir. Well, gentlemen, that'll bring us to section number 4. There is no scheduled public meetings at this meeting, so this will bring us to section number 5, consent agenda, Burke County Public Schools, presentation of financial data for the period ending December 31st, 2022, and this will be presented by Keith Lawson. Burke County Public Schools Finance Officer. Keith, how are you, sir?
Doing well. I hope you are. Good afternoon, county commissioners, county officials. Welcome, Mr. Epley. Look forward to working with you. It's a pleasure to present to you this evening the financial results for Burke County Public Schools through December year to date. You all are certainly familiar with this presentation format. The first line item on slide 1 consists of our state funding. The first 2 columns called annual, we have the previous year's financial results or revenues received and a current year forecast. What we'll concentrate on this afternoon is our December year to date, the next 2 columns. The first line item being state funds, you'll see that in the previous year through December, we had spent $42.5 million. Through this current year, it's 45.4, which represents a 6.8% increase. That may seem or appear to be a bit alarming, but it isn't. As you all recall, we didn't receive a state budget until late December of last year. We didn't receive our state allocations and our budgets in the school system until January, at which point we implemented wage increases and employer benefits cost increases from January year to date all the way back to July 1. So we'll see our state funding levels after the third quarter results come more in line. I'll also note that our state funding consists primarily of wages and employer benefits, and the state, as is not necessarily customary, did fund us last year and this year to cover wage increases and benefits cost. So we're very happy and pleased with that. Our next line item, federal funding, that's our second largest funding source. That is significantly higher than in previous years due to our ESSER funding, our Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Funding, or COVID money. You can see that December year to date, previous year versus current is down 16%. That's just a matter of timing of when we receive those revenues as projects are completed. We anticipate meeting the forecast that we had had to start the year. Next, I think of more concern to you all specifically is the local budget, which consists of the line items local, school nurses, charter schools, and then you all as a pass-through agent for our fines and forfeitures revenues from the clerk of court office. The previous year, we had spent received $7.4 million through mid-year this year. It's at 7.33. That looks like or may appear to be a decrease in local funding. The balancing item to that would be the charter schools. As you all know, when you allot our local funding, the students that attend charter schools, we act as a pass-through agent for you all to those charter schools. We currently pay 9 charter schools for 545 students, and then in addition to that, we also pay for 50 Jonas Ridge children that attend Avery County schools, and we all know that's due to the location and treacherous roads and situation up there in the wintertime. That is up from the previous year when we were paying 8 charter schools for 474 students. Next, school nurses. You can see that does represent an increase there year to year through December. As you all are well aware, and we're very much appreciative, during the appeals budget process last year, you all did approve additional nurse funding. What had occurred over the last couple budget cycles, previous budget cycles, is We had committed to you all, the commissioners, not to ask for any additional funding if we could in any way possible make do. We relied a lot on ESSER funding to relieve our local budget to accomplish that. And one prime example would be custodial supplies. During the last 2 COVID years, we've purchased using ESSER funds, specialized custodial supplies to prevent and eliminate the spread of COVID, which has relieved the local budget. We're not necessarily in that position this year, but just to know that in the previous couple of years that was the case, and that is why we had held our request flat from you all. But again, as far as the nurses specifically are concerned, wage increases and employer benefits costs had increased to us, and with funding being held flat, that had diluted the number of full-time positions that were actually being funded to the point of, I think it was 10.4 positions. You've made us back whole to 12 full positions funded by the county, and again, thank you. Fines and forfeitures, you can see, is down year to year. I haven't spoken with Margaret specifically about this, but oftentimes the collections of those is sporadic, and don't anticipate any issues there as far as fines and forfeiture receipts compared to the forecast. Receivables line, that's a very small line item. That's just a balancing agent of at the central office of what the schools are spending versus what they have paid us back for. So not of any material purpose there. Next is our special revenue funds. Special revenue funds are Fund 8, the funds that the charter schools are not entitled to, which is another whole matter, which is going to be a subject of discussion with the legislators again this year. But that consists of things like pre-K revenues that we collect, pre-K tuition, various programs that we in Burke County Public Schools run, JROTC. The government gives us money into the special revenue fund to support those salaries of JROTC instructors, just to name a few things that the special revenues fund represents. In slide 2, what we have represented here is the actual local spending. As you can see, the first line item, 5XXX, that's instructional, regular instructional services. For your comparison, we have a few years history there for you to see, but if you look at the bold boxed section, you'll see a budgeted column. Regular instructional services, the budget for the year is $5.6 million. If you look to the far right, you can see that we have spent $3 million December year to date. That is an ebb and flow category there based on the timing of supplements and things of that nature. A lot of the employees, teachers being 10-month employees, so it starts slow, it spikes at December, it stays there and through the third quarter and drops back on the fourth. So don't anticipate any real issues with this specific line item. Next, the 6,000 instructional support line item. You can see the budget is $10.6 million. We're at 5.7. So obviously considerably ahead of our budgeted expenditures in this category. This represents maintenance of facilities, our maintenance staff, maintaining of buildings, etc. And as you all are very well aware, inflation has impacted categories such as that significantly. The annualized inflation number for January came out this morning. It's 6.4%. If you take that annualized inflation rate of 6.4% based on the consumables in our local budget, we're looking at over $900,000 increased expense for the same materials and consumables and supplies that we've utilized in the recent past years. We'll go to the 4XXX line. If you look under the budget, we had anticipated for the year of spending $465,000 of our fund balance of the savings. We have spent $473,000 halfway through the year. So at this point, we have already exceeded our allocated fund balance expenditure for the entire year. We are monitoring closely. We are looking at every area that we can to squeeze and to hold and to minimize expenditures. But the facilities require a certain amount of attention, and we certainly don't want to neglect our school buildings. But we are making all attempts that we can to minimize the impact here on fund balance usage. The impact here is two-pronged. It consists of the fact that inflation annualized is 6.4%, so increasing our cost, as well as our ESSER funds are beginning to dwindle. We're all nearing the end of this era, so there aren't the opportunities to relieve the local budget using ESSER funds that we've had in the past. So those are the two main factors impacting that line item. And I say that to say this, as I always do in our meetings. We held our request flat from the county for 2 years, now the third year, with the exclusion of nurse funding, and have absorbed employer benefits cost increases, the small wage increases that make up the local budget, and then the inflationary impacts to the local budget. But all the while, that need has been compounding over those years. So I just want to prep you all in saying that, it wouldn't be necessarily our budget request to you this year, an annual increase request. It's going to be compounded by the effects of multiple years of not receiving increases. So with that being said, I'll certainly entertain any questions you all may have.
Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Keith, here we go. Want to go back to ESSER. How much money you got left in ESSER? Can you tell me exactly, not exactly, can you give me the overall uses of the ESSER money? Understanding that was free money to be used in a way. Did you calculate for the fact that when it did end, was everything okay with what we spent the money on?
Yeah, we've received, Burke County Public Schools, $45 million in ESSER funding. We have spent all but $9.5 million of those funds. We rank 9th in the state out of 115 school systems in ESSER utilization, so we're at the top of the tier in ESSER utilization. As I alluded to, we've used it for one, purchasing specialized cleaning supplies. We've undertaken numerous multi-million-dollar HVAC projects in order to replenish, particularly in our older buildings, and to recirculate to improve air quality. Not that a lot of those facilities, by the way, it was going to be needed in the near future regardless. So really, COVID provided us an opportunity to be able to use these ESSER funds rather than other funding sources to undertake those projects. We had specialized ESSER cleaning teams. We purchased PPE, things of that nature. There's also learning loss set aside. A lot of funding has been spent and was required to be set aside by the state and federal government to address learning loss. We've had summer schools, we've had before and after school remediation and tutoring to try to offset the effects of and the impact of COVID and what it's had on learning. That's just to name a few. I could certainly provide a report, a detailed report, if you would like.
Where do you stand on lap salaries money?
I'm sorry?
Lap salary money.
Lapse, you referring to?
Vacancy money. Your vacancies that
Vacancies.
you have, last
Well-
salaries.
Well, the state helped us out considerably this year as far as recruitment. What they did is they provided us, being a low-wealth county, they provided a sign-on bonus that if we matched, that would help us attract employees. So our vacancy rate has been significantly lowered. I don't anticipate and don't see that we will have any lapsed salary opportunities.
All of that being said, I'm still having a little trouble wrapping myself around why you went $465,000 into the fund balance.
Well, again, our local budget is the budget that we maintain the school facilities out of. We all know lumber, building materials, supplies, those things, and how it's been impacted. Again, 6.4% annualized through January. If you take that 6.4% and you multiply that times our non-payroll and benefits cost in our local budget, it's almost $1 million. Just the inflationary impact.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman.
Keith, what's the plan for the remaining $9.5 million in ESSER funds?
The remaining 9.5 million, there's an expansion of our warehouse at the Kirksey Drive. We are also, during the COVID, or the COVID period, we finally reached our ultimate goal in Burke County Public Schools of being one-to-one with devices for students. So we're also undertaking the build of a warehouse over at Olive Hill where our technology department is located. And pretty much the remainder of that is a few unfinished HVAC projects that'll take place this summer. And then in addition, we're spending still set aside money for learning loss. That's primarily what we have remaining.
Mr. Lawson, is there a window that you have to have that money spent by, or like July
Yes.
the 1st? Or
September 2024. Yes, sir.
Keith, just for maybe their information and new county manager, the history of the nursing, because we've gone back and forth with nurses. We did come out of pocket last budget to make you whole on that, and then you've used other funding for the remainder of the nurses. So what does that look like going forward? Because that seems pretty unsustainable that we've talked, but just for
Yes.
public information, public consumption, give a little background, what you
Okay.
see going forward, and what's the plan?
Well, historically, going back some years, you all, the county, have always funded a certain number of nurses. Also, we had a great partnership with the hospital, our local hospital, and that foundation used to fund 5 nurses. They got out of the nurse funding business for schools some years ago. So we've worked with you all every year over the course of those years to pick up 1 additional nurse per year until we got you to the 12 positions you currently fund. Along comes COVID. We all needed nurses. We needed nurses in every school. So we hired and staffed to a level of 25 nursing positions, 1 at each school. What we've used to fund those additional nurses are a SNFI grant through the Department of Health and Human Services from North Carolina. Then there was an ESSER grant that we obtained this year with the help of Mr. Scalise in the Health Department of 2 nursing positions. And in addition to that, the other 9.6 positions we funded with the ESSER COVID relief money. Obviously, as we've discussed, that's not sustainable at that level. We would like to maintain more than the 12 pre-COVID nursing level in order to get us to the 1 to 750 recommended ratio of nurse to students that the state sets. So we're looking at maybe 18 nurses that we would like to maintain going forward. We've been looking for attrition to help us get the current 25 positions down to a more manageable level. We have 4 positions that we have 4 positions currently that will expire. 2 positions that nurses were rehired only until the expiration of ESSER. 2 other nurses that have since left and are not being replaced. And we anticipate a few more. Also, Dr. Swan, the superintendent, is pursuing a renewal of our relationship with the hospital in the hopes that we can obtain some nurse funding from them as well as the Dogwood Trust. And then, of course, we'll also be looking to you all for some support on nursing positions. But we certainly don't see the need at this point in time to maintain that 1 for every school level now that COVID's quieting down considerably.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lawson, where do we stand on the telemedicine as it relates to being available in our schools?
We do have a telemedicine program. I'm sorry, I can't answer pretty much beyond that. I would defer that to Ms. Michaels, our school nurse director. I'm sorry.
You don't know if I know at one time we were piloting in a few elementary schools, but I was just curious if that had gone broader.
I can't answer that. I'll certainly find out and get an answer for you, though. Yes, sir.
Well, I did want to question you about one thing. You was talking to Jeff about one-on-one devices for children.
Yes, sir.
Were we already not one-on-one with devices?
We were working towards one-on-one.
So we had not gotten there.
We had not gotten there pre-COVID. Their children had access to devices at school. We worked to the point that every child could take a device home.
Okay.
We used ESSER funding to get us to that point when COVID hit, and obviously we had to get there with virtual learning being the way that we educated kids early in the COVID epidemic. And we have a plan going forward to maintain and to continue that one-on-one device effort.
Okay, that cleared it up. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. Mr. Smith?
Keith, what's the average cost for a school nurse per year?
It's around $100,000 per year per position when you include the salary and then the employer benefits costs.
And Keith, one last question on nurses, because obviously this has been the forefront. You're saying from 25 to 18, if we go to a 1 to the 750 recommendation. How many counties actually have that nursing equation staffed? If you got 100 counties, do you actually know, is it 1/3 actually have the appropriate amount? Is it 2/3? I mean, I'd just like to know just for.
That's another answer I'll have to get for you. I can't.
And I know that'll take some
But,
time. I don't
yeah.
anticipate, nothing right now, but I would just like to have that in the next couple of months. I mean,
Sure.
maybe could look at it regionally. You don't have to, if it's information that's easily attained by the state, which I assume it probably would be, that'd be great. But if it's not, we can do something regionally. I'd just like to know where we stand versus counties.
Department of Public Instruction does have an overall statewide nursing director. I'm sure they have that information, and I'll be happy to reach out to them to get that for
If
you.
you could furnish us with that, please.
Yes, sir.
Keith, thank you. Any other questions, comments, gentlemen? All right, Keith, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us to item number 2, a presentation of financial data for the period ending December 31st, 2022, presented by Sandy Holman, our Chief Financial Officer from the college. Sandy, how are you?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it. I hope you got all your questions out with Mr. Lawson there. I'm sure he answered everything well. I want to give you a brief summary of the college's financial position through December 31st, halfway through the year. Again, you've seen this many times, except for our new commissioners. And first, we'll look at our state funding, which is in the first 3 columns there. Our formula budget is $14,014,839. And throughout the year, we get additional allocations from the state for special projects or grants or things that the state deems important. And so with that, we received additional allocations of $2,537,022. So our state budget at December 31st is $16,551,861, which we have spent 46.3%. That's actual expenditures, not including those items that are already encumbered. A majority of the other allocations is budget stabilization funds, grants, special projects, financial aid that normally does not come through the state, but they've had several projects for financial aid this year. Again, you can see that at the bottom, which normally throughout the whole year you have one column, but I've had to go into a second column now with the additional allocations. Most of these are non-recurring, but again, the state has had money over the last year or two with federal funding coming in and one-time money that the state has. The second group of columns that you see is our county funding. Our budget is $2,696,610, and we have spent $1,507,546, or 55.9% of our budget this year. That is a little higher than normal for this time period. And as if you remember earlier in the year, we had fund balance left over from the past 2 years, and we had projects that were still being completed. And so we're using some of the fund balance for that, and that's the reason the percentage is a little bit higher when you just look at the annualized budget. The last three columns is our institutional budget, which again is everything other than state and county funding. And we have budgeted $6,371,479, which we have spent 54.8% through December 31st. And this is very normal for our institutional funding, as with student aid and the bookstore account for approximately 70% of the expenditures, which again, fall semester is higher, and then spring financial aid will run in February. So we'll see more of that coming through in the second half of the year. The total combined college budget for fiscal year 23 is currently $25,619,950, of which we have spent 49.4%, which we feel pretty good about going into the second half of the year. The next slide that you have is just the breakdown of county in a different format, just looking at the different categories. And as normal, salaries and benefits are at 25.2%. Utilities at 19.4%, and then contracted services at 13%. The transfers at 14.9% are again that county funding that we used for informal projects. That is a little bit higher than normal for this time period, but that was for projects that were ongoing at the end of last fiscal year. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have on the finances through December 31st.
Thank you, Sandy. Gentlemen, questions? Mr. Carswell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sandy, great budget, but let me get your thought processes on. Scott and I were in a couple of meetings last week, and one of the things we heard that there was people leaving college to come back to community colleges. They found out in their initial enrollment that it was not all what it was cracked up to be. Do you see a trend that people are coming back to the community colleges, number one? Number two, is the cost of your tuition rising? Is book cost rising and things like that? Or are they staying kind of constant? And is our current enrollment at the college up or down?
Okay. First question, I personally do not see a trend of university students coming back to community colleges right now. That may be further in the future, especially I know with lapse learning that we've seen during COVID, that students just were not able to keep up. You may see some of that in the future year. I haven't seen it yet. Second part of the question regarding our cost, tuition costs have stayed the same. State has kept our in-state and out-of-state the same for probably going on 7 or 8 years now. Bookstore costs have increased somewhat, just as Keith had mentioned, inflationary is affecting all aspects. So we do have some costs with books. We try to keep that relatively low by offering e-text, offering rental options, along with the new and used books. Access codes are where we get hit the hardest, and we really don't mark up access codes. cards, which gives them the ability to go on into a portal for a publisher or class. So that is where they're seeing the biggest hit. It's not went up dramatically, not nearly as high as inflation, because we have tried to do different options to keep those costs low for students. We'll admit that at the college we have increased our local fees, so lab fees for certain courses like our science courses, pottery, woodworking, some of those courses have a specific fee attached to them, and we did have a minor increase with those last year. So that's a little of an increase to students. The last question that you had as far as our enrollment is looking stable, if not just slightly up. It's a very, very small percentage, so for my conservative mind, I'm still saying pretty flat and stable. We did see an increase from our high school students, our CCP population. That group has increased percentage-wise of what we have seen before. Our struggle, or our challenge going into the next few years is adult learners. Those students that are older, out of high school, that maybe haven't went anywhere. They haven't went to the university. They may not even have a job. They may be just at home, as some people say, hanging out in their parents' basement. But the adult learners are the ones that we're concentrating on. That's where we're having our challenge. And even from the standpoint of those students that didn't finish a degree, but maybe they only have a couple classes left before they can finish. One of the items that you see on the additional funding from the state was the Finish Line grant. That helps students who have financial obstacles. We can help them out so that they can come back to school. And even the Longleaf Complete program is a scholarship program for students. If they only have 2 or 3 classes left to finish their degree, we can offer them some financial assistance to help in that.
Do you have any vacancies in teachers or instructors?
Instructors, we don't have a lot of vacancies. We have a vacancy in nursing, which is very hard to fill.
Salary?
I'm sorry?
Because of salary?
Salary is a big thing. Even the hospital system is having a lot of struggle getting nursing. They're having to turn to travel nursing. So we have seen that as a struggle. Mainly our struggle and challenge is staff positions. People are going back to industry to work. They're going to another college that may be able to offer additional money. We've had some retirements. We've had a lot of challenges with staff positions and getting them in. We were trending on having almost a 20% vacancy rate last year. It did near the end of the year in 22 did kind of come back out and stabilize at about 14 to 15%. That's still high for us. And we had positions that would stay vacant for 6 months. We had a registrar position that stayed vacant for 9 months because it was just very difficult to get folks here, especially in our staff positions.
Do you think that will change?
I hope so, and I think it's changing somewhat, but I don't know. I can't tell. I think that's still to be seen with some of the trends coming out of COVID. It's just hard to read the trends right now with coming out of COVID and seeing where we are. They're just not like they used to be pre-COVID.
Mr. Chairman, our employment rate in Burke County has gone down again, but it doesn't look like it's been in the education arena. It's probably law enforcement, medical is probably what's dragging us down right now. Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome.
And Sandy, obviously been out to college a lot. You and I have talked about numbers. When we meet, it's pretty much, you can watch the graphs in Western Piedmont Community College and all the other 57 community colleges look very similar. There's some outliers as far as Wake, you went, the Charlotte campus down there, some of the big places, but the more rural counties, more rural community colleges, we're kind of really in the middle of the pack when it comes to performance, and we all face the same issues, and so some are doing it slightly better, but a lot are doing are not as well, especially with FTE and some of the other things. And so I would say that just for context, that we're just seeing it across community college system, period.
We are, especially in the rural areas, unless you've got something like a big business that has moved into your area or a new program that has really taken off. A lot of the rural community colleges are seeing the same thing. You do have some of the urbans that are growing and a few outliers, but most community colleges are facing the same thing that we are. Even the Western region, our president went to a Western regional meeting and talked to the other community colleges around us on the western side of the state, and they're all seeing really the same thing, a lot of either stable and flat in curriculum or even down, a couple colleges a little bit up. The places where community colleges are seeing an uptick is continuing education, the workforce development, that short-term certificates where you don't have to come to school for a 2-year degree. A lot of colleges are seeing an uptick there, although that's a smaller number. So even though it's a larger percentage, it's still a smaller number than our curriculum FTE.
Think. Any other questions, comments, gentlemen?
We probably need a quick update on the Skilled Trade Center, when we're going to open and what we project might be, how many people will get in to start with.
Love to give an update on that. That building is going along really well. I'm going to jinx it at some point, but it's the first project since I've been vice president at the college that has been on schedule and on budget. So hopefully I won't jinx that. But it is still anticipated to be completed in May of 23, probably June by the time all the inspections and all of the punch list stuff get done. We're hopeful to have some soft openings, either summer camps, a Touch the Truck event that we're hoping to have later in the summer where we'll have a lot of different things on campus and hopefully invite a lot of the community and get some interest in that. The construction rodeo is coming up in March at Foothills Higher Education Center, and then some, of course, the grand opening and things of that nature. Buildings come along great. It's looking great. Would love to give anybody a tour. I'd love to give a tour of our campus. So that is going very well. We have about 20 students currently, not all full-time, obviously a lot part-time. We'd like to get up to 100 to 150 students taking classes during the day and evening classes, curriculum classes, and continuing education classes. So this is going to be a first building that does a lot of mixture of merging curriculum and workforce development. And so that is our goal, and it's coming along really well.
Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? All right. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for a great presentation, as usual. Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll move us on to item number 3, appointment and reappointments to the Council on Aging. This will be presented by Madam Clerk. Ms. Kay.
Hello, good afternoon, and happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
This is a request to make some appointments, reappointments, a removal, and a seat modification to the Council on Aging. The terms of appointment for Paige Pitts and Jerry Probst have ended, but they're both willing to serve another 3-year term ending November 30th, 2025. We received applications from Kathy Duncan for seat number 5 and Richard Moore for seat number 11. Both of those has a term ending November 30th, 2024. We would like to remove Ann Holland from seat number 3 due to a resignation. Mary Wright occupies seat number 9, which is currently designated as a non-voting seat. She was formerly employed with Blue Ridge Community Action, which is a service provider for older adults, and to avoid any conflict of interest, that seat was non-voting, but I am pleased to report that she has retired from service with Blue Ridge Community Action, and so we'd like to reinstate her voting privileges. So that's what I have for you for Council on Aging.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, item number 5, removal and appointment to the Burke County Planning Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to remove Shannon Stanberry's name from the official roster from the Burke County Planning Board and thank her for her service to the community. She has resigned, and we have an applicant, Mr. Brian King, to fill that vacancy from the East for seat number 3 to complete the remainder of a term ending September 30th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions, comments? If not, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. This brings us to item number 5, reappointment to WPRTA, presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to update the county's representatives on the Western Piedmont Regional Transportation Authority. The request is to appoint Alan Glines to be the county manager's designee, so he would move up into seat number 2, and to appoint Bradley Kirkley as the alternate member, which is seat number 3. Both have a term of June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Gentlemen, questions, comments? There being none, Madam Clerk, thank you.
You're welcome.
Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us to item number 6, Community Development, Resolution to support the closure of Kimball Glass Drive, presented by Alan Glines, our Deputy County Manager, Planning Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We have a request received from the Department of Transportation to close Kimball Glass Drive. We're going to put a map up for you. This is ironically, a very small state road that only serves as a driveway, for the most part, for the Gerresheimer factory or facility over off of Wamsutta Drive. So they would like to close that small DOT road so that they can do further expansion at the site. And you all reviewed and approved the support for a building reuse grant for them to refurbish that manufacturing facility earlier in the year. And what they would do is expand operations within the existing building and build a warehouse facility kind of on the side of the road. So that's what they need to do. This is just standard process to support the DOT in this effort, and they've also will be meeting with the city of Morganton for the very same purpose. So I can answer any questions for you if you have any.
Thank you, Alan. Questions, comments, gentlemen? You're getting off easy. Thank you, Alan. Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us to item number 7, audit contract for FY 2022-2023. This will be presented by Margaret Pierce, our Finance Director.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
You have in your board packet the audit contract for the FY 22-23. Funding for this is will be included in next year's budget. They are requesting a 5% increase, which is $2,125, which is well within market with inflation the way it is. I'm happy to entertain any questions you would like.
Gentlemen, questions, comments for Margaret? You're getting off easy as well.
I like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us up to item number 8, request for approval of written agreement between Home Trust Bank and Oak Hill Fire and Rescue Protection Association, Inc., presented by Mike Willis, our Fire Marshal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is, seems like we've got this one finance company that requires this, and none of the rest of them do. But Community Trust Bank is who Oak Hill has chosen to finance their fire station addition they're putting on Pea Ridge Road. And they just need those documents signed. One is from the commission and one is from the finance, just stating their department's in good standing with the county based on their contract, and their financial projection is what it's intended to be. So that's all they're looking for today. We have Chief Winters here and also William Brown from their board of directors, if you have any questions for them.
Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Community Trust was the best bank to go with, give you the best deal.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? Just one quick one, just for general information. We're going to be locating this on Pea Ridge Road, and you and I know where that is, Jimmy, because we went to school at Oak Hill. And so just for our information purposes, how far is that from the current station, which is right there at the intersection?
It's right at 3 miles.
3 miles. As far as response times inside the Oak Hill community, I know you've overlaid a map and taken a look at it. Response times should be the same. It would.
Anything you would improve.
Okay.
And it improves the insurance rating area for that portion of Pea Ridge Road.
Okay. Thank you.
How many homes actually are going to be affected by the insurance rate, do you know?
Well, I mean, nothing negative.
Yeah, I mean to the positive. That's okay.
Actually.
Okay.
There's no negative impact at all.
Yeah.
It's going to be a positive impact.
Well, yeah, you know, obviously, when you put something new, a new fire apparatus there, they get the better insurance rate, so everybody.
As a whole.
As a whole.
As a whole.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Do we have county water out P Ridge?
City water. Right.
City water, okay. That does it, how far out P Ridge does it go?
You're at the end of the line up there.
Yes, sir. Right past the church there on the Few Ridge sign is the last hydrant on the line. But there are folks who receive water out on out. It's not a hydrant area.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, gentlemen? If not, thank you, gentlemen. Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Moving on to item number 9, lease extension, Jonas Ridge Convenience Site. This will be presented by our friend Mark Delahunt, General Services Director. How are you, Mark?
Good, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The lease for the Jonas Ridge Convenience Site actually expired on June 30, 2022. Property owner has agreed to renew the lease with an increase of $600 a year, which equals about $50 per month. The total amount of the annual lease will be $5,100. The lease runs from July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023 and includes the option for an additional year. The new Jonas Ridge Convenience Site is anticipated to be open mid-summer, so the hope is that by the time this lease expires, we'll be in the new facility. However, if the county does have to extend the lease beyond June 30 of this year, we can cancel it by giving 30 days written notice. Now, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mark, thank you. Gentlemen, questions, comments? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us to item number 10, Tax Department Release Refund Report for January 2023, presented by our friend John Bridgers, our Tax Administrator. John, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to be here and members of the board. For the month of January, we released $9,098.45, and we did refunds of $100 for motor vehicles was $1,061.32.
Short to the point. Gentlemen, any questions, comments? There being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us item number 11, Tax Collection Report for January 2023, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the month of January, year to date, we've collected $15,882.27. That's 92.28% of the budgeted balance or budgeted amount to collect, and with a remainder collect of $784,117.73. Motor vehicle tax, we have collected $3,380,000. Oh, I got a typo in there, apologize. I have to correct that. That's 56.33% of the budget amount of $6 million, and the balance to collect is $2,619,693.26. Current year taxes, we have collected $396,189.01. That's 93.42% of the budget amount, with a balance to collect of $3,403,810.99. Delinquent taxes for this year, we have collected $474,975.40. That is 67% of the budget amount, with a remainder to collect of $225,024.60. Late listing penalty, we have collected $173,954.46. That's 55.22% of the budget amount, leaving a balance to collect of $141,045.54. For the total levy, we have collected
$15,882.27. That's 93.97%, leaving a balance to collect for the remainder of the year of $2,886,856.42. Any questions?
Gentlemen, heard the presentations, questions, comments? There being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us up to section number 6. Or John, are you still on this one? Items for decision, acceptance of, or rejection of offer to purchase surplus property, or is that our county attorney?
Mr. Attorney, Mr.
Okay.
County Attorney's going to that.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, folks. The county has received an offer to purchase certain property that's owned by the county. It's, the read is 11244. It's approximately 86/100 of an acre, and it is off of Morgan Drive. It is landlocked. One of the adjoining owners, a man by the name of Tim Norman, has submitted to the county an offer to purchase this property for $3,000. Back in 2010, the county looked at all of its tax foreclosure properties and came up with a list of what they would accept for each property. Back then, they came up with a minimum bid of $3,725 for this property. However, the property has been in the county's name for now almost 17 years, and someone has finally looked at it and made an offer on it. Mr. Norman owns adjoining property. The property is also adjoins property by 300 Burt Drive, LLC, by Ronald and Anna Woodby, and by Richard and Verita McCall. So the way this works is, he has made an offer. The county can choose to accept the offer or can make a counter offer of what they would accept. If that's what you would do at your next meeting, if you so choose. Once that's done, the property has to be advertised, and anyone is free to make an upset bid on this property, and if they do so, it has to be at least $750 more or 5% more, whichever is greater. If no one makes an offer within 10 days of the advertisement running, then the county can sell the property to Mr. Norman and receive $3,000 and put it back on the tax rolls and receive tax payments every year. If someone were to upset it, then we would run a new ad with a new upset date, and we would go through the 10-day period again.
Thank you, JR. Any questions, comments for our county attorney? Well done, sir. Thank you.
Sure.
Then without objection, gentlemen, this item will remain on the agenda. That brings us up to item number 7, reports. 2022 summary of accomplishments. This is really just a placeholder.
We'll share this full report with you. It'll be brief, but inclusive of what our departments have all done in the last year, and we'll look forward to sharing that with you in next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Can't wait to see it. All right, gentlemen, this brings us to item number 8, some courtesy reminders. Our February regular meeting is February 28th, 6 p.m. here at the Board of Commissioners meeting room. Our meet and greet for our new county manager, Epley, is tomorrow from 3 to 5 right here. I'm glad we redid this room, Kay. We're getting a lot of mileage out of this. And then Friday, we have a Jonas Ridge Waste and Recycling Center groundbreaking. That will be held at 2 p.m. I was looking at the weather. Gentlemen, I think it's actually going to be above 50. Maybe a little windy, could have a little rain in the forecast, but for Jonas Ridge this time of year, it could be a lot worse. So we anticipate a large crowd, and so we hope everyone can come to that. We also have a budget retreat March 2nd from 1 to 4 at Lake James State Park Visitor Center. For those of you that have not been in there, beautiful facility, and you see the address there. Also, on March 3rd, we will continue the budget retreat from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At the Lake James State Park Visitor Center. And then I'll remind you, we'll have March pre-agenda meeting back on the first Tuesday, like we're back to regular, March 7th, 3 p.m. here at Board of Commissioners meeting room. And then March regular meeting, March 21st here. I would remind everybody to please spay or neuter your pets, adopt or foster a pet from Animal Services, and don't litter, pick up trash if you see it, and please cover your loads to convenience centers or the landfill. So, with that, gentlemen, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn.
Yes, sir.
I might ask that the board give some consideration to moving the March 21st meeting to the day before on the 20th, if that might be possible. I'm not expecting a decision right at the moment, but if we could consider that, and I have some planned business travel, would not be able to be at that meeting.
Okay.
If that's possible.
Okay.
Which day was that?
That would be March the 20th instead of the 21st, our regular meeting in March.
Can everybody check their schedule, send out an email, Kay, and we can check the schedule and get back to you and see if that works for everybody? I don't anticipate it would be a problem, but we'll take a quick poll. And like I said, can you send that? Or is there any reasoning we can't do that via email and get back to you and you just post that if we do decide to move that?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
That's why I'm asking you, Madam Clerk.
But if everybody will let me know their availability, I'll provide you some options on the easiest way to facilitate that change.
Okay. And so, okay, and we'll take that under consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I can go ahead and report my availability.
What's that?
I can go ahead and report my availability. I am good.
That is March 20th. I'm waiting for mine to pull up, and we can just get it set right here, and that'll set, that will, Commissioner Smith, how's that work for you?
As far as I know, unless my boss woman's got something planned.
Okay, let me check one thing here.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add, if everybody is available, you guys could add that to your agenda for the 28th to adopt via resolution, just to change your annualized meeting schedule, and it can be done at our upcoming meeting in 2 weeks.
That'd be easier than us do something here right now.
Well, you could add it to your upcoming agenda now.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
via resolution.
okay, let's do that. Y'all all right with that, gentlemen? That's the easiest, slickest way to do it. All right, sounds good. Any other instructions we need to give? We good? All right, well then, gentlemen, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.